Welcome, everyone. I am so excited about today's rooms topic. I personally have so much love for architecture and just different design styles in general. I grew up around this stuff. I just recently I relocated to Chicago, and so we did the architecture tour that goes around the Chicago River and talks about the different design and construction aspects of the city that make it so iconic. And so I am very excited to present today's speakers, Letty and Derek. And so they are going to be talking about historic homes, construction details, characteristics, some of the different legislation that actually provides tax benefits for your clients. As there is benefits to owning a historic home, the marketing of historic homes, and just how to deal with a listing that may not be your typical or average listing. And so this is going to be kind of the agenda that we're working with today. And so without further ado, I know we only have about 26 more minutes in this room. And so feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. Yes, Boji, it will be recorded. I'm recording the session right now, so I can send the recording to you as well afterwards. But without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Letty and to Derek.
Awesome. Thanks, Ela. That was a great intro. Yes, I've always been very interested in historic homes and architecture. I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I think that's where it kind of comes from. Everything there is like 15th, 16th century. So when I came to the States, I was definitely looking for the more older homes that really spoke to me. So I work mainly in Los Angeles. So a lot of these things might be a little bit more specific to just LA, but I know it will apply in other areas as well. So if we're talking about home styles, historic home styles, there's a pretty wide variety of it. You have like craftsman's, Tudor style, Spanish. I mean, the list goes on about mid-century, of course. So I think it really depends on which style, speaks to you that you might want to focus on more. But I think regardless, there are certain clients that really will be asking for a certain style home. So it will be really good to know at least, maybe certain neighborhoods. I think Boji was just saying that certain neighborhoods that really are known for certain style homes. So as far as construction details, what I'm really looking for is, these homes, if they're not modified, a lot of times the original wood that was used is in much better condition. So that's super helpful, I would say, to know, because these homes will really last, centuries, of course, right? So a lot of these homes are going to be over 100 years old. So I think that's something that's really important to look for if you're doing inspections, is making sure that the property, has still a lot of original details. And then that's something where I usually get a lot of questions about from clients, is like, is this actually more work to maintain a home? There is definitely some more work involved, but I think the long-term gain is that you get a very unique home that's really going to maintain its value. So I think that's a really great thing to keep in mind. I had notes, going back to my notes.
Letty, I have a quick question for you regarding the home values of historic homes specifically. Those, have you seen, just in terms of market trends, have those dipped at all, or have they stayed pretty consistent? Especially, I'm sure in the Los Angeles market, I'm sure they've stayed pretty consistent and even risen in more recent years.
Yes, I've seen pretty consistent. Obviously, they've adjusted as the market has adjusted as well. But I would say, in the markets that I work in, if you have for instance, like a craftsman that's been completely remodeled and modernized, so to say, people actually, for certain neighborhoods, really will come to the neighborhood and expect an original character home. So if it's completely been modified, those actually tend to go for a lesser price, which is interesting. But that does happen. So I would say, yes, they've adjusted, but the ones that are really true to character. And again, like it takes a unique buyer for that. But the people that are really loving historic homes, they will pay for it. And those details that the home still entails, nooks and crannies, certain wood details and everything, they will pay slightly over, I would say, within reason, of course. But I think there's a strong demand for it.
What I noticed, excuse me, I'm sorry if I
No,
cut
jump
you
in,
off.
all good.
I really keep an eye out on the mid-century modern stuff. That's like my
Mhm.
favorite historical or architectural style, and that's my bread and butter. Aside from selling cabins, mostly A-frames, and then of course historical lofts and things like that. So I focus on a array of architecture. But I noticed during COVID and when we had like the big housing boom, that kind of stuff, especially mid-century modern, even everything that was going for premium that was like 15-20% over asking,
Right.
mid-century modern seemed to pace even higher.
Hmm.
You'd see stuff that was listed for like 1.2 and go for like 1.7. It was kind of crazy. And then when the market changed and you start to see things dip, they tend to hold value more,
Yeah.
just because there's fewer of them. It's like classic cars versus the rest of the car market. It's its own kind of segment.
Yeah.
So they tend to hold value, and then like in a really good market, they seem to outpace the other stuff, is what I've noticed.
Yeah.
That's a good
I would
analogy.
agree with that. I think also, just even during COVID, like people's living experience, the home became actually more important. So I think people came to also really value their space more so than other times where they were just rushing in and out. Like now it became not only a home, but it also became a working environment. So I feel like that had a part of it to do as well. So
Yeah, and the projects, right? Like being able to get on YouTube and like do whatever, like
yeah,
to busy yourself, your mind, and whatever.
yeah, yeah. No, I love mid-century too. We do a lot of craftsmen in Spanish, I would say. But yeah, I love mid-century. That's also one of my favorite styles. Just
Yeah, I mean, and everybody has their own favorite, right? And that's what's kind of
yeah.
cool about this. And we'll talk about that in a little bit on the marketing front.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I think that's important, and I think Derek will jump into a little bit deeper. But that's important to kind of know, like, hey, what are the details that really make a mid-century mid-century? What are the details and the characteristics that make a Spanish home? And I think that will really tie into marketing as well. Um, I'll jump real quick about like tax benefits and things like that. So in LA, we have a area called, or the city has an area initiated that's called the HPUZ. It's called Historic Preservation Overlay Zone. So there's certain areas that are designated as such. It is a combined of a group of local, very, very passionate people that love historic properties, combined with city officials that comprise of the HBUZ board and also the Mills Act. So HBUZ, in my opinion, really will keep the integrity of a neighborhood intact. This means no investors can come in, no properties can be torn down. If an investor does work on a house, they need to get HBUZ approval. Flip side of it is also that, someone's been living there for 50, 60 years, for generations, they also still have to, sorry, my dogs. Of course, it happens on the call. The HBUZ still would have to be consulted on any remodeling on the exterior. So for us, that entails exterior painting, fencing, landscaping, even the roof color needs to be approved by the HBUZ. So it is a little tricky, but it does help maintain the integrity of the community. And I think as such, it does hold value in those communities more as well. And then you really get pockets. They're known for mid-century, they're known for Spanish, they're known for craftsmen, for instance. And the next step is like you could actually go into Mills Act and get property tax savings as well. I don't know if there's any questions about that. No, it was a mouthful.
So we did have a question in the chat from Boji. What's the foundation of typical historic homes, and how long do they typically last if it's in liquefaction zone?
So most of the foundations I've seen, they're still brick. So that's how it was originally built. If you're looking at again, my main focus is craftsmen's and Spanish, which craftsmen's, they're, 1910, 1915 is very average year built. Spanish are more like 1920s, 1930s. So a lot of times you are dealing with a raised foundation, you're dealing with brick. Now, over time, sometimes the brick has been cemented on both sides and it's more stabilized, but you would still, I always recommend for clients to definitely look into the foundation very closely, because it is something that needs to be addressed possibly. At the same token, I'm always looking at it like, hey, these homes have been there for 100 years. They've been through earthquakes. for some reason, they just seem to be, managing through it. And not to say that there's some that definitely, especially with water. Yes, water is not our best friend in those cases. So as long as we can do some bolting, we can do possibly some retrofitting, some tuning up, these foundations are done pretty well if maintained. I think a big problem is that within the bricks, if the mortar in between, if that's really, disintegrating, then at some point you have a house on loose bricks. That's not good. But yeah, does that kind of answer it?
Yes, it does. I was just thinking, say if you have a buyer and you want to handle their objections, like this home is 100 years old.
Right.
And is it going to be expensive to repair the foundation if it does, if there is a crack or,
yes,
that kind of
foundation can definitely be a good $80K if they're going to have to redo the whole thing. I would say a majority of my clients they just want to stabilize it. They want to, so it's like, 10, 20, they want to stabilize and make sure it stays solid. Again, like unless it's really like, a big problem with like, leveling, or there's like some significant foundation issues. But if it's just reinforcing, that's usually what my clients are looking for. A full replacement of foundation, I would say to clients, only do that if this is your forever home, then yes. But if this is a home for 5 or 10 years, it's a big investment, I would say.
Are they typically, what type of foundation are they? Are they like a sandstone or cross base, or just they don't pour concrete?
No, it is usually like a raised foundation. So you do have a crawl space. The majority that I've seen are brick. So it's literally just brick with mortar. And then there is wood framing throughout, right? Wood beams with cement pillars. But ideally, there's some additional reinforcement in place. You actually do want to have like T-straps, and you do want to have some bolting, ideally to make it, tight. And again, it really depends on how the brick is. I will say, just out of my experience, I've had issues with appraisers. If they saw the brick, they would not lend on the property. So if certain things are very visible, I mean, I'm not saying it will happen, but I've had issues with appraisals in that sense. So I do think it needs to be stable and needs to be, there needs to be no visible signs of any sagging or like, foundation related issues.
So would you recommend for someone who is selling their historical homes to always do a foundation inspection, or the buyer who's buying do a foundation inspection?
I commonly do recommend a foundation inspection on the purchase side. On the seller side, I would say if there's really reason to believe that there's, something there, because as you know, like once we do it, we do have to disclose it. So I think they just have to know. They have to know that there's going to be responsibility then to whatever the foundation report says. You're going to have to disclose it. So they just have to be okay with that. But I do think it's good to go in with your eyes wide open and know what you're dealing with. Because it is a big ticket item on older homes. Foundation, yeah, for sure. Okay. And sewer too, by the way. Sewer is a big one. We have still a lot of clay pipe sewers and clay, cast iron. So you just want to make sure that you get that done. And I think Donna was asking about, I use foundation companies specifically. Yeah, I use some, and I've gone through a lot, and I finally found one that is not scaring my clients, but it's still, ethical and says the right thing, but like doesn't, yeah. So, okay, Donna, where are you located, Donna? Mount Shasta. Okay, I have driven by. I'm not familiar with the real estate there. Let me see. Yeah, you might be able to use a structural engineer as well, I would say, if there's not a specific foundation company. Yeah, I think that could work. Structural engineer, someone that has a familiarity with that. Yeah.
Quick question. Just something that comes to my mind. I'm in the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people love electric vehicles.
Yeah.
If you buy a historic home and you want to be able to charge, set up those Tesla chargers, at your historical homes, chances are you're probably going to have to rewire, do a whole upgrade on the electric system, right? Historic homes typically have those knob and tube.
Knob and tube, yeah, correct.
Yeah. Would that be a problem? Would that be not allowed or lose the value of the home?
I would say the knob and tube is just not. I mean, it's mainly a fire hazard, so it's majority of homes have done some adjustments already to it and some upgrades to it. I would say, besides foundation, that's probably an item to really be mindful of as well, because you always want to make sure that it's safe. So if you have your electrical updated, then there's no problem. You can definitely still do a Tesla, setup, because people also have air conditioning and things, so they're going to need to upgrade it very, very likely anyway. And also, because it's such an old home, they've been modified over time. So you might get one that has some things already updated, but not everything.
And when you do that, when you start doing that, and then you want to do a solar panel, will that destroy the integrity of the historic home? Or
yeah, so in the areas I'm talking about, if it's HPUZ, a solar panel cannot be visible from the street because they're really looking at the facade from the property. So that is something to keep in mind. They're not always willing or supportive of solar panels if they're visible from the street. Yeah, but there are historic homes that have solar panels for sure. It's going to depend on where it's located and what maybe local regulations are saying.
So we have to check with that specific areas. Local.
Yes. So if you go like on ZMOS or any of the public records, the zoning will state whether or not it's HPUZ or if there's any historic designations to that area.
Will that be on the title report too, or?
Yes, it should be on the title too, but it's really the zoning where I'm looking at. Like it will say like R1-HPOZ, for instance.
Okay, got it. All right.
But again, like I'm not sure how it is in San Francisco, so that's my learning curve. But that's how it is here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Boji always has so many questions whenever he comes into rooms, and I always just end up loving hearing the discussion.
No, these are great questions. They're very valid.
Yeah. So are there any other tax benefits of historic homes that we wanted to touch on? Because I know we wanted to move into marketing for historic homes.
Yeah.
And hand that off and go kind of back and forth to how you might market historic homes versus like how Derek might market historic homes and give that kind of perspective as well.
Yeah, and also like I'm always available if anyone ever has a question, but I think Derek has a really great story to share about how he's marketing and how he's really become a specialist in certain areas. So love to hear that.
Sure. So when it comes to actually marketing a specific home, I really like the website Circa. It's like a older home website, and you can pay to add your listing there. And so not only does it make sellers happy, but actually it's like a pretty heavily trafficked website. And then of course social media, just making sure that you add all the proper hashtags, for that architectural style, historical homes, historic homes, all those kinds of. You get up to 30, so use them all, right? Like Tudor home for sale plus geo, wherever it is. But specifically, what I want to talk about is if you really like this stuff and marketing yourself as an expert around historical homes, because you can support yourself through this niche. And typically in your area, there is someone who already focuses on that, but that shouldn't deter you because sometimes people don't like that person. I happen to know that there's a really good mid-century expert in Orange County and nobody likes her. But everyone uses her because she's the expert, right? She sells it all. And so people are like, oh, I don't want to go mess with her because she sells it all. It's right for the pickings because a lot of people don't like her. So you never know. It's always good to have Coke and Pepsi, right? It's fine. It's fine to have another choice. Don't let it detour you. If there's not a lot of that product around you, I wouldn't focus on it. But if there's just enough, and what's enough, if there's 5% of the active listings or 10% of the active listings are different types of architectural style, especially historic or something like that, or you have neighborhoods that are very plentiful with that, that's enough. It's plenty. I'd rather dominate and own the smallest slice of a pizza than share my pizza with a bunch of screaming kids. I'd rather eat my little slice of pizza all by myself, or share it with the one neighborhood de facto or whatever. I'd rather share it with one person than bus full of kids. So there's just a lot of opportunity to stand out, especially on Google and on social media, by really honing in your messaging and talking about those types of architectural styles, like repeatedly on blogs, and sharing like new listings that may not even be yours that are that architectural style on Instagram and things like that. It's kind of an endless like content machine that Google really likes, and you're able to just organically rank on search results when somebody Googles like San Francisco craftsman homes for sale or Victorian homes or whatever, because just not a lot of people are doing it. So there's not a lot of competition. And if you just keep doing it constantly and sending out content constantly, it's easier to rank and stand out. And once people go on Google and they search out, this architectural style or that types of homes for sale, and you come up, you're seen as the expert. Google picked you, you're at the top. Google says you're the expert to the client. So I think there's a ton of value. I focus on architecture. That's my thing. It's my passion. And so it also aligns with my prowess on Google of getting found. So I really like the product. I rank with Google, and then I know about it because I actually sell it and love it. So I'm authentic to the client, and it's like a nice little niche for me. So I highly recommend niche. I think architecture is a fantastic niche, especially because of tax benefits and things like that, pride of ownership, typically in really cool neighborhoods that hold value. It's just something that I feel very passionate about.
Derek, I have a question for you.
Sure.
How do you, so I've looked at your websites a lot, sent you a few emails, and thank you for all the help, because Letty and I have been revamping our website. But
Yeah, always.
how do you, so like when you go on cabinhomes.com, it's showing me like all the cabins. How do you syndicate, I guess, like what, this is a very specific question, but are you using like an IDX? And then if so, what one, so that you can filter by property type? So does it automatically pull the MLS listings for like all cabins, or are you manually adding those?
We created a company called Search with Style, and it's a company that goes through IDX results using some AI and some other algorithms and things like that to create segments from IDX. So we can plug in any IDX, and then it has like a filtration process. And so that's, to answer your question, I'm a part of a company that filters out, and then that same company owns that Cabin Homes website. So we own the engine, and then we own the website.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like looking into it more, and I could filter by a lot of stuff, but
not style.
Yeah, not style. So I was like, how the heck did you do that? So you made it. Okay.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, a lot of time, effort, and unfortunately a lot of cash. A lot of cash.
Well, be interested in using it at some point. So.
Yeah. Let's talk more about it.
For sure. Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? I think there's some stuff in the chat, but I'm not reading the chat. Ela?
So I was gonna ask too, in terms of any anecdotes you've had with clients that are specifically looking for craftsmen, original homes, historic homes. Have they started off looking for those specific style of homes, or have you ever had clients that have been not really sure what they wanted style wise, and that's something that they've kind of been introduced just from working with either of you as an agent?
I'll start. So typically, because of where my clients come from, they come from Google typically, because I position myself that way. They usually start on Google, and they kind of know what they want, and they start Googling that kind of stuff. And to Joe's point, they're not finding a website that shows like just that specific style, or where they can filter by style. So they usually land on the neighborhood expert for historical or something, and then they make like a contact with that person because they happen to show like the most craftsmen or something that have been sold. So they just, in their mind, they're like, okay, this must be the expert. I'm just going to connect with them because I can't find all of the craftsmen for sale on a website somewhere. So I'm just going to speak to this person. And then that person's me typically. Letty, I'm not sure about you.
Yeah, I would say, I think what happens is that as you are passionate about certain styles, And certain neighborhoods, you put it on social, you have it on your website and everything. You are going to attract people that have that, interest. I've definitely gotten people specifically come to us for the fact that, hey, we want to have craftsmen in this area. We know you work here. I would say the majority of them, yes, do come to us already knowing that they want a historic property or be in a certain neighborhood. I think to answer your question, like, sometimes people don't know what they don't know. So there are some situations where I would say you expose them to certain neighborhoods and they're like, wow, I had no idea there's amazing homes here. But I do think the neighborhood can be adjusted, but a lot of times they do have an affinity for a certain style home is why they seek you out. Yeah, because it builds trust if you have experience in a certain style home or a certain neighborhood. So the conversation just becomes a lot easier when they know that, like Derek was saying, you've been selling these properties, you've lived in some. I had a 1913 Craftsman, I've remodeled it myself. So you actually also live it, so you can explain it to someone in that sense. And so I think that just builds trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you both. I know Boshi has one more question, and then we will wrap up for today. And I know, like you both said, if anyone has any questions beyond this, please let us know.
Yes.
And so we'll be sure to get back to you. But to do any interior upgrades, is it harder to find materials that fit the house in today's market, like size, like window size, etc.?
Yeah, I use a lot of local people or people that are very, very into historic homes. They'll still have to go get HPC approval and stuff. But I have people that are specifically are making new windows, all up to code and everything, but due to old specs, because there's a lot of customizations. And with HPC, you need to have like a certain width, there's a lot of specifics to it where you usually cannot go the common route of just, ordering in the bulk at Home Depot. No. So there is a lot of but Nextdoor has been great for me. Nextdoor, just asking people for recommendations. Hey, you have a good floor guy, someone that can restore old floors, who does windows. And so, yeah, I would say kind of get your little group of people together who are just like specialists in these kind of homes in these areas.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's getting easier to kind of source some of that stuff because there's like a better awareness about it, and then people are like kind of reproducing stuff tastefully that may not be OG but looks OG.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a mindfulness around there, and because of the internet, it's easy to like look at old pictures or share.
Yeah.
Like, hey, here's a picture of what I have in my drawer of these 4 knobs, and then someone can make like 400 of those knobs.
Yeah.
So it becomes more prevalent. It's not original, but it looks close enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you have great salvage places too. I love going to salvage places and
Super good.
Rip stuff out, and you go there and you're like, oh my goodness, I can use that built in, or I can make a whole vanity from it. So it's again, Derek and I are probably we're deep in.
Yeah.
But there are places where you can still find historic details, even if certain things have been removed from a property.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. Okay. So we are at time, unfortunately, for today. There's been so many good conversations and questions happening. And so maybe we'll have to do another one of these down the line for sure. But I just want to thank first and foremost Letty and Derek for coming in, speaking, and providing their expertise today. It's fantastic just to learn more, hear more about historic homes and just the process of being an agent for one and dealing with clients that are looking for that specific style of home. So again, thank you both so much for your time, for your brain, and for your wisdom. I really do appreciate it. And thank you so much to everyone that joined us for today's room. So many great questions. And so we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Ila.
Thank you.
Have a good